The most dangerous thing in your life is not the debt sitting on your credit report right now. It is the man standing behind the counter who was told to be afraid of you because you do not owe anyone a dime. You have heard about credit scores. You have heard about interest rates and minimum payments, and the slow bleed of a mortgage that never seems to get smaller no matter how many decades you throw at it. What you were never told is simpler and colder than any of that. There used to be a currency that outranked every one of those numbers. It was not printed. It was not calculated by an algorithm in some data center you will never see. It was a handshake. And somewhere in the last 60 years, quietly, on purpose, that currency was declared worthless, and a new one was issued in its place. A currency made entirely of paperwork. This is the story of who made that switch, why they made it, and what it has already cost you. Let me tell you about a man named Davis. Davis is 57 years old. He drives a paid-off truck with 200,000 miles on it and not a single warning light. He owns his house outright. 3 bedrooms, modest, bought slow, and paid down early because he hated the idea of a bank holding a piece of paper with his name on it for 30 years. He carries 1 debit card, no credit cards, no car note, no student loan hanging around his neck like a leash. Davis did every single thing the old rules told him to do. He worked overtime instead of financing a boat. He fixed the water heater himself instead of putting it on a card. He said no to 1,000 small purchases that would have felt good for an afternoon because he was building something that mattered more than an afternoon. And when Davis needed to rent an apartment near a temporary job site last year, he was denied. Not because he had bad credit. He had no credit. The system pulled his file and found almost nothing there. And nothing, to that system, looks exactly like risk. A man who owed nothing to anyone was treated like a stranger walking in off the street with no name and no history, while the applicant behind him, $60,000 deep in credit card debt, sailed through the same office that same afternoon with a smile and a set of keys. Sit with that for a second. The man who was completely free was flagged as dangerous. The man who was drowning was rewarded for it. Davis did not lose because he made a mistake. He lost because he was still playing a game the referees had quietly changed the rules of years ago, and nobody sent him the memo. Here is what nobody tells a man like Davis. For most of human history, the thing that got you a loan, a lease, a line of credit, a second chance, was never a number on a form. It was your word, backed by your reputation, backed by the fact that everybody in town knew exactly what kind of man you were. A handshake used to be collateral. It was enforceable in a way no lawyer could improve on, because the penalty for breaking it was not a lawsuit. It was your name, in a small enough world, becoming worthless. That was the original credit system, and it worked for longer than any bank you have ever done business with has existed. Now hold that thought, because you are about to watch, in real time, the exact year they killed it, and replaced it with something that looks safer and is actually built to work against you. October of 1987. A trading floor in the middle of a downtown financial district, the kind with marble columns out front and men in wool suits who had known each other for 20 years. A broker we will call Walter Crane had built his entire career on that floor the old way. Clients did not sign 40-page agreements to work with Walter. They shook his hand. His father had shaken hands with their fathers. When a client called Walter with a problem, Walter picked up the phone himself, and the two of them solved it man to man because Walter's reputation was worth more to him than any single trade could ever be. By the middle of that October, the market had been climbing for years on a wave of confidence that felt to the men on that floor like it would simply never end. And then, on a single Monday, it broke. Computerized trading programs, brand new that decade, designed to sell automatically the moment prices dropped past a certain point, all triggered at once. There was no human being at the wheel anymore. There was no Walter picking up a phone to talk a nervous client off a ledge. There was only code, executing exactly as it was built to, dumping stock into a falling market faster than any group of humans could have, feeding the crash it was supposedly protecting against. The market lost close to a quarter of its value in a single session. Fortunes that had taken 20 years to build were gone before lunch. Here is the part that should make you angry. In the investigations that followed, in the congressional hearings and the industry reforms, the lesson everyone drew publicly was that the market needed more rules, more paperwork, more disclosures, more contracts, protecting the institutions from liability. What nobody said out loud, because saying it out loud would have been bad for business, was that the actual lesson was the opposite. The handshake had been the safety mechanism. The moment trust between two human beings got replaced with a system, the humans lost their ability to stop the system from destroying them. This is what you need to understand about the world you are standing in right now, today, whatever city you are in, whatever job you are walking into tomorrow morning. The mechanism that broke on that trading floor never got fixed. It got scaled up and sold to you as an improvement. Every contract you have ever signed without reading past the first page, every terms of service you clicked through in 4 seconds, every credit agreement written in 6-point font, designed so you would not finish it, is the same machine that liquidated Walter Crane's clients in an afternoon. It is not there to protect you. It is there to remove the one thing that used to protect you, which was another human being who knew your name and would have been ashamed to look you in the eye if he screwed you over. The mechanism is identical today. Only the names have changed. So let's talk about how the machine actually runs, mechanically, because this is not a conspiracy. Nobody is meeting in a back room plotting against Davis specifically. It is simpler and, in a way, worse than that. It is engineering. Somebody built a system whose entire purpose is to measure one thing and one thing only: how profitable you are to lend to, not how honest you are, not how disciplined you are, not whether you pay your debts because you gave your word. The system cannot see any of that because none of it generates revenue. What generates revenue is interest. A man who carries a balance, who makes a minimum payment on time every month for years without ever paying the thing off, is the single most valuable customer that system can manufacture. A man like Davis, debt-free, judgment-proof, needing nothing from any lender, is worth exactly $0 to that machine. Worse than zero, he is a data gap, and a data gap to an algorithm built to price risk looks identical to a threat. Think about that the next time you feel proud of paying something off early. The system did not thank you. It quietly moved you into a lower tier of usefulness. Now let me tell you about a second man, because Davis alone might look like bad luck. His name was Ray. Ray spent 31 years as a plant manager, the kind of job that used to come with a pension you could actually count on, and a handshake from a company that meant something. Ray trusted the system completely, the opposite mistake from Davis in every visible way, but the exact same trap underneath. Ray had a broker his father had used, a nice man, a trustworthy sounding voice on the phone, Ray signed the paperwork without reading the fine print, because that is what you did when you trusted a man. And the fine print protected the firm, not Ray, the moment things went wrong. When Ray's industry got restructured out from under him in his 50s, and his retirement account took the hit at the exact same time, the contract he had signed years earlier did precisely what it was built to do. It transferred the risk from the institution's shoulders onto his, not because anyone lied to him, because the paper was written that way from the very first day, in language built to be skimmed, not understood. Davis did everything right and got flagged as a risk. Ray trusted the process completely and got quietly bled dry by the same process. Two different men, two opposite strategies, and the machine got both of them anyway. That is not two unlucky men. That is a design working exactly as intended. Here's the part that's going to make you uncomfortable, and it is the part this entire script has been walking toward. That old code men used to live by. Carry yourself with quiet authority. Keep your word. Need nothing from the room you walk into was never just etiquette. It was never about which fork to use or how firm a handshake ought to be. It was financial architecture wearing a suit, a man who commanded respect without raising his voice. Commanded it because everyone in that room could feel instinctively that he did not need a single thing from any of them. He was not there to sell you something, borrow something, or impress his way into your wallet. That posture, the one your father or your grandfather had without ever explaining where it came from, was not manners. It was math. It was the visible outward sign of a man who owed nobody anything, and could therefore afford to be honest with all of you. And somewhere around the same stretch of decades that gave you Walter Crane's trading floor, somebody figured out that a man who needs nothing from the system is a man the system cannot sell to, cannot lend to, cannot leverage. So the code got dismantled, quietly, not through some single dramatic event, but through 15 or 20 years of advertising, built specifically to reframe thrift as embarrassment and debt as sophistication, of financing offered on everything from furniture to funerals, of an entire culture retrained to associate a full calendar and a full credit line with success, and a paid-off truck with being the kind of man who never made it. That code did not stop working. It worked too well. A man who carried himself that way did not need to be sold anything, and an economy built on selling things could not tolerate very many men like that walking around. You feel this every single day, whether you have ever had language for it or not. You feel it when a coworker with 3 car payments and a rotating stack of credit cards seems to command more attention in a meeting than you do, despite the fact that you are the one with money in the bank. You feel it when a lender treats your paid-off house like a problem to be solved, rather than an achievement to be respected. That splinter under the skin you cannot quite name, the sense that doing everything correctly somehow left you less protected than doing it wrong. That is not paranoia. That is you correctly reading a system that was engineered a long time before you ever signed your first contract. So what do you actually do with all of this? Not a checklist, not 3 easy steps to financial freedom by Friday. This script is not selling you a program. It is asking you a harder question. And the question is about identity, not tactics. Somewhere between Davis, who owns nothing to anyone and got treated like a criminal for it, and Ray, who trusted a system that was never built to trust him back, there is a third path. And it is the oldest one there is. It is the decision to become, once again, the kind of man whose word is worth more than any document a lawyer could draft against you. Not because contracts do not matter. They do. But because a man who has made himself sovereign, debt-free, self-reliant, financially invisible to the institutions that profit from his fear, is a man those institutions cannot touch, no matter what fine print they write. You cannot repossess what you already own outright. You cannot garnish income from a man who does not need your paycheck to sleep at night. You cannot leverage a man who has already decided he needs nothing from you. Davis is still out there, still driving that same paid-off truck, still saying no more than he says yes. He got denied that one apartment and is stung. And then he found another place, cash on the table, and the landlord who took it did not need a credit bureau to tell him what kind of man was standing in front of him. He could see it. That is the part the algorithm will never be able to measure, no matter how sophisticated it gets. Some things can only be read by another human being willing to look you in the eye. That old code, the handshake, the quiet authority, the man who needed nothing from the room, was never a nostalgia piece. It was the last piece of leverage they could not find a way to price, and so they talked you out of using it instead. Choose the handshake. Choose the code. Choose to be the man in the room nobody can buy, sell, finance, or frighten. The men who understood this were never the loudest ones in the room. They were just the ones everyone else, whether they could explain why or not, was quietly watching.